the nervous system, structure, function, and disorders. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our channel Mind Mentor. Today we are going to talk about the nervous system, structure, functions, and disorder. The nervous system is a complex network of specialized cells, tissues, and organs that coordinates and controls various functions within the body. It plays a crucial role in transmitting signals, processing information, and maintaining homeostasis. The nervous system can be broadly categorized into two main parts: the central nervous system, CNS, and the peripheral nervous system, PNS. The central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord. It serves as the command center of the body, processing sensory information, generating thoughts, emotions, and controlling motor functions. Here are some key features of the CNS. 1. Brain. The brain is the most complex and intricate organ in the body, responsible for various cognitive functions, including perception, memory, learning, reasoning, emotion, and voluntary motor control. The brain is divided into several major regions, each responsible for specific functions such as the cerebral cortex for higher-order thinking, the cerebellum for motor coordination, and the brainstem for basic life-sustaining functions. 2. Spinal cord. The spinal cord is a long, thin bundle of nerve tissue that extends from the brainstem down the vertebral column. It acts as a bridge between the brain and the rest of the body, facilitating communication between the two. The spinal cord is involved in reflex actions and serves as a conduit for sensory and motor signals. Peripheral nervous system, PNS. The peripheral nervous system consists of all the nerves and ganglia located outside the CNS and acts as a communication network between the CNS and the rest of the body. The PNS is further divided into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. 1. Somatic nervous system is responsible for voluntary movement and sensory perception, and it includes sensory neurons that transmit information from sensory receptors, skin, eyes, ears, to the CNS, and motor neurons that convey commands from the CNS to skeletal muscles, allowing for conscious movement and interaction with the environment. 2. Autonomic nervous system controls involuntary functions of the body, such as heart rate, digestion, respiration, and glandular secretion, and it's further divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. A. Sympathetic nervous system, often referred to as the fight or flight system. The sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for action during stressful or emergency situations, and it increases heart rate, dilates airways, and redirects blood flow to the muscles. B. Parasympathetic nervous system, known as the rest and digest system. The parasympathetic nervous system promotes relaxation and recovery, and it slows heart rate, constricts airways, and directs blood flow to the digestive organs. The coordination between the CNS and PNS is essential for maintaining homeostasis, responding to stimuli, and adapting to various environmental conditions. While the CNS processes and interprets sensory information and generates appropriate responses, the PNS carries out these responses by transmitting signals to and from the body's tissues and organs. Neurons. These are the functional units of the nervous system responsible for transmitting and processing information through electrical and chemical signals. They consist of several distinct components that work together to enable their functions. Here's an overview of the main components of neurons. 1. The cell body, also known as the soma, is the central part of the neuron, and it contains the nucleus, which holds the genetic information of the cell, and it is responsible for maintaining the neuron's metabolic functions and overall health. 2. Dendrites are branching extensions that emanate from the cell body. They receive signals from other neurons and convey these signals toward the cell body, and dendrites play a critical role in integrating incoming information from various sources. 3. The axon is a long, slender projection that extends from the cell body and carries nerve impulses away from the cell body. It's covered by a fatty substance called myelin, which insulates and speeds up the transmission of signals, and the end of the axon branches into smaller structures called axon terminals or synaptic terminals. 4. The myelin sheath is a protective, fatty layer that covers some axons, especially those of larger neurons. It's formed by specialized cells called glial cells, oligodendrocytes in the central nervous system, and Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system, and the myelin sheath acts as an insulator, enhancing the speed of nerve impulse conduction along the axon. 5. Nodes of Ranvier are small gaps in the myelin sheath along the axon and are essential for the saltatory conduction of nerve impulses. Saltatory conduction involves the rapid jumping of nerve impulses from one node to another, which speeds up signal transmission. 6. Axon terminals, synaptic terminals. At the end of the axon, there are specialized structures called axon terminals, which form synapses, which are junctions between neurons where communication occurs. When an action potential reaches the axon terminal, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft, which then bind to receptors on the adjacent neuron, initiating the transmission of signals. 7. Synaptic vesicles. Within the axon terminals, synaptic vesicles store neurotransmitters, and these vesicles release neurotransmitters into the synapse in response to an action potential, facilitating the transmission of signals from one neuron to another. 8. The synaptic cleft is the small gap between the axon terminal of one neuron and the dendrite or cell body of another neuron. Neurotransmitters released from the axon terminal cross the synaptic cleft to bind to receptors on the postsynaptic neuron, transmitting the signal. 9. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that transmit signals from one neuron to another across synapses. They are stored in synaptic vesicles within axon terminals. NAD. When released into the synaptic cleft, neurotransmitters bind to receptors on the postsynaptic neuron, leading to the generation of a new electrical signal. 10. Receptors are specialized proteins located on the cell membrane of the postsynaptic neuron, and they bind to neurotransmitters and initiate specific responses in the postsynaptic neuron, such as generating an action potential. These components work in harmony to allow neurons to receive, process, and transmit information throughout the nervous system, enabling various physiological and cognitive functions. Nerve impulses and synaptic transmission. Nerve impulses, action potentials, also known as action potentials, are rapid electrical signals that travel along the length of a neuron's axon, and they are the fundamental means by which information is transmitted within the nervous system. Nerve impulses are initiated when a neuron receives a sufficient stimulus, causing a change in its membrane potential. Resting membrane potential. At rest, a neuron's membrane has a negative charge on the inside relative to the outside, creating a resting membrane potential. This is maintained by the distribution of ions, with more sodium ions, Na+, outside and more potassium ions, K+, inside the neuron. The resting membrane potential is typically around 70 mV, MV. Generation of action potential. When a neuron receives a strong enough stimulus, the cell's membrane potential becomes less negative due to the opening of ion channels. If the depolarization reaches a threshold level, around 55 mV to 50 mV, voltage-gated sodium channels open, leading to an influx of sodium ions. This rapid influx of sodium ions results in a positive feedback loop, causing a rapid depolarization and the initiation of an action potential. Action potential phases. 1. Depolarization. Voltage-gated sodium channels open, leading to an influx of sodium ions into the neuron, and this phase results in a rapid rise in the membrane potential from negative to positive. 2. Repolarization. Voltage-gated sodium channels inactivate, and voltage-gated potassium channels open, and potassium ions exit the neuron, causing the membrane potential to return to its negative resting state. 3. Hyperpolarization. The efflux of potassium ions continues briefly, causing the membrane potential to become more negative than the resting potential. 4. Resting state. The sodium-potassium pump actively restores the ion concentrations to their resting levels, preparing the neuron for another action potential. Propagation of action potentials. As an action potential is generated at one point along the axon, it depolarizes the adjacent region, triggering the opening of voltage-gated sodium channels there. This process repeats along the axon, leading to the propagation of the action potential, and in myelinated axons, the action potential jumps between nodes of Ranvier, significantly increasing the speed of transmission. Saltatory conduction. Synaptic transmission is the process by which nerve impulses are transmitted from one neuron to another across synapses, and it involves several key steps. 1. Presynaptic neuron. The action potential travels down the axon of the presynaptic neuron to the axon terminals. 2. Neurotransmitter release. Arrival of the action potential at the axon terminal triggers the opening of voltage-gated calcium channels, and calcium ions enter the axon terminal, leading to the fusion of synaptic vesicles containing neurotransmitters with the presynaptic membrane. Neurotransmitters are released into synaptic cleft via exocytosis. 3. Synaptic cleft. Neurotransmitters diffuse across the synaptic cleft, a small gap between the presynaptic and postsynaptic neurons. 4. Postsynaptic neuron. Neurotransmitters bind to specific receptors on the postsynaptic neuron's membrane, and this binding can lead to depolarization, excitatory synapse, or hyperpolarization, inhibitory synapse, of the postsynaptic membrane. 5. Generation of postsynaptic potential. Depending on the type of synapse, the binding of neurotransmitters may result in graded potentials, graded depolarizations or hyperpolarizations, and if the depolarization is strong enough to reach the threshold, it can trigger an action potential in the postsynaptic neuron. 6. Termination of signal. Neurotransmitters are either broken down by enzymes or taken back into the presynaptic neuron through reuptake mechanisms, and this prevents continuous stimulation of the postsynaptic neuron. Structure and functions of brain. The brain is the most complex and vital organ of the central nervous system, CNS. It controls and regulates a wide range of physiological, cognitive and emotional processes. The brain is divided into several distinct regions, each responsible for specific functions. 1. Cerebral cortex. The outermost layer of the brain, the cerebral cortex, is responsible for higher-order cognitive functions such as thinking, reasoning, memory, perception, and conscious awareness. It is divided into two hemispheres, left and right, each further divided into 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. A. Frontal lobe plays a crucial role in decision-making, planning, judgment, motor control, personality, and language production, Broca's area. B. Parietal lobe processes sensory information, including touch, temperature, and spatial awareness, and it helps us understand the location of objects in our environment. C. Temporal lobe is associated with auditory processing, language comprehension, Wernicke's area, memory formation, and emotions. D. Occipital lobe is primarily responsible for visual processing and interpretation. 2. The cerebellum is involved in coordination, balance, motor control, and some cognitive functions related to timing and attention. 3. The brainstem consists of the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. It controls essential life-sustaining functions such as heart rate, breathing, digestion and sleep-wake cycles, and also serves as a relay station for sensory and motor pathways between the brain and spinal cord. 4. The limbic system is involved in emotions, memory, and motivation, and includes structures like the amygdala, emotion processing, hippocampus, memory formation, and hypothalamus, regulation of basic physiological processes and homeostasis. 5. The thalamus acts as a relay station for sensory information, directing it to the appropriate regions of the cerebral cortex for further processing. 6. The hypothalamus regulates various physiological processes, including body temperature, hunger, thirst, hormone secretion, and circadian rhythms. Structure and functions of spinal cord. The spinal cord is a long, thin bundle of nerve tissue that extends from the base of the brainstem down the vertebral column. It serves as a communication pathway between the brain and the rest of the body. The spinal cord is divided into segments, each associated with specific spinal nerves and functions. 1. Cervical region of the spinal cord is associated with the nerves that control the upper limbs, neck, and head, and it also contains the nerve pathways for respiratory control. 2. The thoracic region is involved in sensory and motor functions of the trunk and thoracic organs. 3. The lumbar region controls the lower limbs and the hips. 4. The sacral region is responsible for controlling the lower limbs and various pelvic organs. The spinal cord plays a vital role in reflex actions, which are rapid and involuntary responses to stimuli. Sensory information from the body is transmitted to the spinal cord, where motor responses are generated and transmitted back to the muscles or glands. This process allows for quick reaction without the need for conscious involvement from the brain. Common nervous system disorders. 1. Alzheimer's disease. A neurodegenerative disorder characterized by memory loss, cognitive decline, and behavioral changes, and it is associated with the accumulation of beta amyloid plaques and tau protein tangles in the brain. 2. Parkinson's disease, a progressive disorder affecting movement control due to the degeneration of dopamine-producing neurons, and it leads to symptoms like tremors, rigidity, and bradykinesia, slowness of movement. 3. Multiple sclerosis, MS, an autoimmune disease where the immune system attacks the myelin sheath surrounding nerve fibers. This disrupts nerve impulses, leading to various neurological symptoms like fatigue, impaired coordination, and sensory disturbances. 4. Epilepsy, a disorder characterized by recurrent seizures due to abnormal electrical activity in the brain. Seizures can vary in type and severity, affecting consciousness and motor control. 5. Stroke, a sudden interruption of blood flow to the brain, leading to brain cell damage, and ischemic strokes result from blocked arteries, while hemorrhagic strokes are caused by bleeding in the brain. 6. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It is a progressive motor neuron disease that leads to muscle weakness, paralysis, and ultimately, respiratory failure. 7. Schizophrenia, a complex psychiatric disorder characterized by disturbances in thought, perception, emotion, and behavior. It often involves hallucinations, delusions, and impaired social functioning. And there you have it, dear viewer, the culmination of our exploration into the nervous system. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated with our future content on Mind Mentor.